the difference and the uniqueness of every individual, including us ourselves, right? We have to accept that we are unique individuals, okay? We're not going to be exactly like someone else, even our peers that we might, our best friends that we might find so many similarities with. We are our own unique individuals. And as teachers, it's important for us to relay this information or this concept, these principles over to them because young people, teenagers, even us as adults, but more so with the young people. Of course, this is designed for the 11 to 13-year-old, and also prior to that, a lot of their decisions are based on emotion. Okay, and that's a part of the goal of the peaceful solution is to get them to see the rules that govern healthy, peaceful interactions between themselves and others, and make their decisions, get in a habit of making decisions based on moral principles and not emotions. Now, we don't want them to ignore emotions, as we've covered a little bit about, when you're rejected, when you go through the steps of, finding a friend, and it might be that, they're just not interested in being friends with you. Well, you've got some emotions that might come into their lives where they might feel a little bit embarrassed, a little down, possibly rejected or even angry, right? Well, the goal is to not teach them to ignore emotions or be emotionless, but to recognize the emotions, categorize them between what is positive and what is negative, because as we've taught, everything falls into one or two categories, and then formulate a response based on the outcome that they should have in their mind, which is to bring about a peaceful solution. And of course, this takes practice, many, many, many years of practice before it becomes an automatic thing. But the beautiful thing about teaching this to very young people is because their minds are so plastic, right? They're so moldable and formidable. It's a little bit easier for them to grasp hold of these concepts, remember them, and then bring them back to the surface when the need arises, as opposed to us sometimes us older people. It takes a little bit more time, a little more practice, and a little more effort. But it's important. Excuse me. But it's important for us to review these concepts with our students continuously and bring these things back to mind. Now we are in chapter 4, but you know, as a teacher, you kind of have a lot on your plate because you want to remember what was covered and tie back in the previous 3 chapters, but you also want to remember what was covered and tie back in to the previous book, right? The previous unit, which in this case was the unit on character. All right, so we're in chapter 4 of the acceptance unit, and this chapter here is entitled "The Importance of Friends and Friendships," because friendships, relationships are very important in the forming of our character. Right? Remember what we covered in the character unit and showing how our environment, and like Chris covered in the previous classes, when we think about environment, we can't limit that to just the trees, the birds, the ground, the air and things of that nature. Our environment is made up also of people, right? People who interact with us on a regular basis, day after day, whether it's family, whether it's a school member, schoolmates, whether it's people in our neighborhood, people we encounter as we go to and fro from point A to point B. All of that makes up our environment, right? Even if you don't directly interact with someone, a person who grows up in a neighborhood where there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of gun violence, shooting, robbery, gang-related activity. Even if they're not directly impacted, like they haven't been shot or they haven't been robbed or anything like that, that still makes up their environment. And those types of environments can play a big part on the choices people make, right? As they get older, because there are certain things that they will learn to value growing up in certain environments. Okay, so we want to keep that in mind as teachers, especially because a lot of the things you're going to see in dealing with your children, your students, are going to in part be based on their environment. Now, that also plays a part in what we covered in chapter 1 of character. I like to continue to, it's more of a reminder for myself, but I mention it over and over as a reminder to you as well, that environment is also one of the factors that help to form our character. Okay. And so we're going to look back here as we talk about bullying, because friends are important. We have to be careful about the friends that we choose to keep. And William talked a little bit about, people who, in their desire to be accepted, sometimes they might end up associating or befriending someone who actually is a bully. Okay. And of course, those things can have negative consequences. And we talked a little bit here about guilty by association. And, sometimes people are actually tied into or accused of certain crimes just because they associate with the perpetrator, right? So, somebody might rob a store, but because you are a friend of that person who, actually robbed the store, and that person's reputation kind of precedes them, you might be accused of it as well. The police might want to bring you in for questioning, or the principal might want to bring you in for questioning, if something took place on the school campus because you're a part of that group. And you see this a lot in the news because people who are associates with people who commit certain crimes in society, they try to gather everybody, as many people as they possibly can, to take them in for questioning, right? Because they figure, well, these people spend the most time with them. They're going to know them the best. They'll know their habits, places that they stay or where they might be located at this time. So we want to be very careful, in guiding them about, being mindful about the people that they choose to associate with. And this is why in going through going through this process of choosing friends, it's important that the student first and foremost understand the difference between personality and character, which is one of the first things that we covered in the character unit when we started getting a little bit further into it, right? And then they need to understand the difference between positive and negative character, right? Because the friendships, yes, personality does play a part in it, but the foundation of that friendship, the strength, the thing that'll hold that friendship together and ensure that both people have mutual respect for one another, both people build up one another and not tear one another down, and both people are involved in positive activities, is going to be based on the development, the maintaining, and the upholding and practicing of a positive character. So, let me see here. Before I cover that, let's go back here. Let's look to lesson plan 4, page D. Lesson plan 4, page D. And this was covered before, but we'll just go ahead and reread it and refresh our minds on the procedure that we're going to continue in this evening. And it says here in number 7, lesson plan 4, page D, and this is procedure 7. Tell students that sometimes people go to extreme measures to make friends and to fit in. Okay, and I think many of us as adults who have been through these formative years as children, preteens and teenagers and so forth, we've probably been down that road, or at the very least have considered it, kind of altering our beliefs and our behaviors in order to fit in with a group of people, just because we wanted to fit in, just because we wanted to belong. Okay, and that does not necessarily mean that's always a bad thing, right? Because conformity can be, remember, as we covered, both positive and negative. So it doesn't always mean that because you want to alter certain of your beliefs or customs or your behaviors, it doesn't mean that you're doing something that's negative. If the group and the behaviors that you're wanting to conform with helps in the developing of a positive character, helps you in being better at school, helps you to be more honest, helps you to be more respectful, well, that's perfectly fine. That's the goal that we and they as students, young adults, should have, and we should encourage that. But here it says, bullying, criticizing, and putting others down are some of the negative ways people try to earn friends, and it's kind of like um, an unspoken rite of passage, right? Like you know that there's a particular group of people, um, and you kind of know their reputation. They have a reputation of bullying other people, right? They have a reputation of making fun of people or putting people down or being a disruptive in class or always trying to get a laugh, out of the teacher or not out of the teacher, and while the teacher is teaching, being disruptive and so forth. So seeing that, you think, well, in order to earn their friendship, right, I have to do the same thing. And you see this a lot of times, at least it's portrayed in the movies. From what I remember from some time ago, when people are incarcerated, they want to go and find the biggest, baddest guy and pick a fight with him, right? Why? So that they can earn respect, right? They can earn, and I use that air quotes too, respect. Of course, the peaceful solution is 180 degrees from society in their definition of respect. But notice here it says, bullying, criticizing, and putting others down are some of the negative ways. Now, these are negative ways people try to earn friends. And I want to read this here to you, show this here definition to you in regards to the definition of the word earn. And I don't know if you've ever looked it up as a teacher. It would be advantageous for you to, I know it is for me, it helps me out a lot, because even if I've learned these words in previous years, it's easy to forget the definition of some of these things. So it's very beneficial to go back and rehearse the information and get the definition in your mind, especially when it comes to a procedure, right? Because a procedure is telling you how to teach, what to teach, and what the goal of the lesson that you're teaching is supposed to yield in your students. So as a teacher, remember, this is not something that our students are seeing. This is something that only we as teachers are seeing. So, it's fine for us to go in and break down these words a little bit more because it's going to better enable us to fulfill the goal of the lesson. All right. So looking at this definition, earn here, notice it says gain deservedly in return for one's behavior or achievements. Okay, gain deservedly in return for one's behavior or one's achievements. To receive money as payment, and this is another example of it, for work that you do, or to get something that you deserve because of your abilities or actions. All right. And, a lot of times that's associated with earnings. People, they earn a certain amount for the work that they do. A person might mow some grass and they earn, $10 as a result of that. But, the key thing I wanted you to kind of get out of that is the gain deservedly in return for one's behavior. All right. Because what we're dealing with here and what we're covering in regards to character, and one of the evidence or one of the key things that you can see as the evidence of one's character is their behavior, right? And what even precedes that is a choice. And even further back than that, even including emotions, is the thought, right? Well, where did that thought come from? What led to a person thinking in a certain way to think that it was okay to conduct themselves or behave in a negative way in order to impress someone so that they can become their friend? Okay, obviously these are things that they have been taught or they have valued over a period of time, maybe seeing certain things and seeing the outcome or the superficial outcome of certain patterns of behavior and imitating those things themselves, right? Kind of like when people imitate what they see taking place in the movies or on television or in video games, right? They're seeing the superficial outcome of what takes place, because in the movies they're gonna portray, the bad guy doing the illegal thing and getting away with crime, you know, the group of people going in and taking the house, taking the casino for hundreds of millions of dollars, stealing in effect and getting away with it, right? And they're showing the superficial effect of somebody breaking a rule or behaving in an immoral manner and making it to look like, wow, there's a great reward that can come with that, right? So when a person is seeing that on a regular basis, that's a part of training. And eventually they're going to think, hey, I could do that too, and I can receive this quote unquote reward or this thing that I so desire. But this is return for one's behavior, okay? And of course, when you conduct yourself in a negative way in order to attract um, people who have negative character, as a result, eventually down the road, and this is something that a lot of people don't think about, they don't think about the end result of their choices. A lot of young people, that's a part of the problem. They don't quite think about the end result of their choices, and that's the case with a lot of situations. And it's not always that a child, a young person, is trying to be rebellious or trying to be obstinate. You know, they just don't have the ability to foresee what their choices will bring. And of course, that's our job as parents and teachers, to guide them and to help them, to understand that everything that they do, it brings about a consequence or a reward. Now, our goal for them is to bring about the rewards, and we know sometimes they're going to do things that bring about the consequences. But at that point, we want to help them to understand what they did to bring about that consequence, and then redirect their minds into the pattern of behavior that'll turn that around so they can bring forth rewards. So the key word there in that earning, it's something in return for one's behavior. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Then it says here, emphasize that bullying is wrong, and have students turn to page 72 to 74. And we're kind of already a little bit into that, and William covered up and led to page 72 in last class, and we're going to be picking up on page 73. And have them turn to that in their handbooks and read the section, Bullying is Bad News. Stress that if anyone is being bullied, they should tell an authority figure in order to stop the bullying. And William covered that, in the previous class, and giving the warning that, you should never retaliate. And of course, we're going to cover that again in this class, and you're going to hear that many, many times throughout future classes, right? Because that's a theme that we really strive to drive home to the students of the Peaceful Solution. Retaliation is never the answer. It is never, it's not even considered a solution, right? It's like, you would not consider a steel bolt as food, right? Even if somebody puts it in their mouth and tries to chew on it, it's not considered food, right? Retaliation is not considered a solution to dealing with a problem, okay? And that's something we really want to stress to our children. And some people might come and say, hey, I've always responded this way in the past when people showed me disrespect, and it's always worked to get them off my back. Yeah, people drive down the wrong way of the street many, many times. That doesn't mean that's correct. It doesn't mean that that's the acceptable way. And eventually they're going to get in an accident. Eventually, negative actions, the consequences of those actions will catch up with that person, right? And so we want to just kind of, the goal is changing the hearts and the minds. And you might encounter some young people, and it could be very surprising because you think, wow, they're not that old. They haven't even experienced life that much, but their minds can be very hardened because of the circumstances and the environments that they've grown up in. Some of the young people have been extremely abused, been victim to or witness of extremely abusive situations, and those things, they do affect the mind and the heart, and they do affect that person's decision-making process. So as teachers, we have to kind of be thinking about these things and recognize this, and then use what we've learned here in the peaceful solution and in these procedures to help to redirect their thoughts towards positive actions, positive thoughts, and as a result, positive actions. So it says here, under no circumstances should they retaliate, and emphasize that retaliation will only make the situation worse. And I believe we covered this one time before. I want to look at it again here in this definition of the word circumstance. And it means here a condition, detail, part, or attribute with respect to time, place, manner, agent, etc., that accompanies, determines, or modifies a fact or event, a modifying influence or factor. Okay, and I really want you to kind of pay attention to that last thing there. A modifying influence or influencing factor, kind of like the snowy weather was a circumstance that led to the vehicle's accident. All right, it was a factor that led to that vehicle sliding off the road. Right, and so there is never a situation or a time where events or a person's attitude or the individual's emotions, right, would justify them retaliating, right? They can't say, well, he hit me first, or he's been bullying me for 5 years now, and I just reached a breaking point. No, right? Under no circumstance should they retaliate, okay? Let an authority figure know. And in today's society, there are a slew of authority figures that a person can contact, a young person can contact, in order to discuss these problems that are bothering them. They've got their parents, or guardians. They might even have a trusted member, adult of their family, another person in their family that they can speak with. They have their teachers. They also have their guidance counselors and administrators and so forth. And nowadays, schools have several guidance counselors, even per grade unit, just to handle the vast amount of students and the problems that come with those students on a daily basis. So, it's just a matter of looking, first and foremost, educating them to know where to look and when to look so that they can find a solution other than retaliating. And then, of course, here that last sentence says, emphasize that retaliation will only make the situation worse. And as you'll see when we get into our respect unit, it's compared to adding fire to a fire, right? Responding to disrespect with more disrespect, only makes the situation worse. So let's go over here to back to page 72 and 73 here. And William left off on 73 and talking about, bullying is bad news. And talking about a little bit about guilt by association and just being mindful of who you are friends with, right? Be very careful about who you're friends with, and don't be afraid, to speak up when someone does something to hurt others, whether it's physically or verbally. We should never be afraid to, now this doesn't mean we have to always throw ourselves into a dangerous situation. We can simply let someone know. And nowadays, almost everybody carries a cell phone with them, where they can contact somebody who can help in that situation, so that that can be dealt with in a respectful and a peaceful manner without bringing injury to anyone else. All right, so let's look on page 73 here. Page 73. And then we're going to be talking about some simple solutions for dealing with a bully. Okay, so we've established what a bully is, okay, how it's bad news, how that when a person is in the situation of being a bully, it doesn't make them an evil person, although it might be very easy to think, well, they bullied me, I wish they were dead, right? Yeah, that doesn't fix anything. The fact is they just have not been trained, as was covered in the first paragraph on page 72 here. They have not been trained in the peaceful solution, right? So they don't understand the importance of respect for others. They probably haven't been shown the importance or taught the importance of respect for themselves. Okay? So this is what gives the student an upper hand in dealing with bullies, right? We talked about it in referencing knowledge is power, right? Knowledge is power. So when they understand what a bully is, what a bully does, right? How not to be a bully themselves, and how to recognize bullying, then they have the power to make decisions that helps them to avoid situations where bullying takes place, participating in it, or even alerting an authority when they see it occurring. Now it says here, if you are the victim of a bully, then you are facing a difficult and challenging stage in your life. But do not give up on yourself or on people in general. As difficult as these times may be, they will pass. And you think about it, I think most of us have gone through, gone through times in our life, especially in our probably right about this age, junior high and even high school, where we experience bullying, right? And I think we all can say that it doesn't feel great, right? Even if we sat there and laughed at it, kind of joking to kind of let it roll off of our back, like pretend like it didn't really bother us, but it does bother us, right? It doesn't feel great. No one likes being put down, right? No one likes being not accepted by their peers, right? No one likes to be shunned or made fun of, okay? And when a person goes through this on a regular basis, right? Remember what we talked about in the previous chapters? 150,000 students, and I think it's more now today. It might be closer to 170,000 or so. Well, at least pre-COVID, stay home every day because of bullying, right? Because they don't want to have to deal with bullying. So they choose not to go to school. Now, some of this is unbeknownst to their parents or guardians, right? They might leave out before their parents and then come back home later because they just don't want to deal with the bullying. They're afraid of the bullying. They're afraid of the teasing. They're afraid of the physical assault and the violence and things of that nature, right? And children, we can't forget that they might be younger than us adults, but they're humans too, right? And they experience hurt, they experience difficulties, they experience trauma, okay? The difference between us and adults typically is that we have a little bit more experience in how to deal with these things and thinking about the long-term consequences of the decisions that we make, where they don't, right? They don't have the experience in how to deal with those things, nor do they always take into consideration how they respond will affect them, 1 month down the road, 5 years down the road, or 20 years down the road, okay? And this is why we have to be the educators of that. But notice here it says, as difficult as these times may be, they will pass. They will pass. And that's important, and helping, to really trying to connect with your students, you see a lot of things in our environment, and this example that I'm going to show you here, this is a let me see if I can find that there. I thought I made the copy. If I can't, then I'll just have to give it to you by memory there. But we just recently, and I think still right now, at least in the United States, on the East Coast in the Atlantic, we're still in a pretty strong hurricane season. Okay, if you take a look at this right here, this is a picture of palm trees, and I'm sure you've seen footage of that in if you've ever seen footage of hurricanes or tropical storms that come through, and a lot of the some of the coastal southeastern coastal areas, even on the West Coast, and when you get out into the the Caribbeans and those islands, you see a lot of palm trees and things of that nature, and when the strong winds come through, that's kind of the picture you've seen. Well, I was trying to find one a little bit more extreme than that because sometimes those trees will actually be bent over almost at a 45-degree angle if the wind is strong enough. And you look at these palm trees and you think, man, these trees, they got to be taking a serious beating, right? When these strong 50, 60, 100, 150-mile-an-hour winds are coming through. But after the end of this and the storms all cleared up and the rain stopped and the winds have died down, those palm trees actually stand back upright, right? And I know I copied it, but for some reason I don't have it with me, and I apologize, but because it was something that the scientists were showing, but palm trees actually get stronger in the wind. Those hurricane force winds actually help to make the palm tree stronger, right? And the way that the tree is designed, it's designed to resist and to flex in those forces of the wind. And when you look at that analogy there, you can kind of look at that as compared to we talked about barriers to developing a positive character, right? Those winds, in this case, it would be something like bullying, which is like a pressure or a force against you, a negative influence, a negative pressure or a force against you, trying to prevent you from going down the road less traveled, right? If you've ever driven into wind, or ridden a bike into wind or walked in the face of wind, it could be very difficult, right? But you actually, like these trees, can become stronger, right? When we're faced with difficulties and challenges, when we're faced with tests to our morality, our moral character, it gives us the opportunity to put into practice the things that we've learned. Now, scientific research has shown that when a person puts into practice what they have learned immediately after they learn it, they retain much more of it, right? Than just going, learning it, hearing it, and then going home later on, right? When they put that information into practice immediately, it's something like 90, 92, or 98% of what they learn, they remember it when they put it into practice immediately after learning it. Well, like the winds, the force against these trees are the negative influences, the negative pressure, the bullying, that a person might face occasionally or sometimes on a daily basis, right? It doesn't have to define them, and this is something that we have to relay to them as teachers. Those things don't define the rest of your life, right? You can look at them and learn from them by putting into practice the things that they've learned through the peaceful solution and how to respond, right? And the goal should always be to respond in a positive way, to respond using the peaceful solution, to respond, for the purpose of bringing about peace and not escalating the situation into war, okay? And so they pass, difficulties pass. Person's not going to be in junior high all their life. They're not going to be in high school all their life. And if they decide to go to college, they're not going to be in college all their life. Life continues on. People come into your life, people leave your life, right? But you, as an individual, that student, they have to realize that they're going to have to live with the decisions that they make. And this is why it's so critical right now, because a lot of young people, they, based on these dealings that they have in school, it starts to form a negative pattern of thinking and how they interact with people who they perceive as bullies, right? Then sometimes they get into a situation where they become vigilantes, right? Taking care of anybody who's been bullied by somebody else, right? They go and they beat them up, or they rob from Peter to pay Paul, or whatever the case might be. And this doesn't work either, because that still falls under the category of retaliation. But, you want to remind them that, hey, even though you might face difficulties in your life, it's going to pass. The difficult times will pass eventually. They just need to be strong. And this information that they're learning here is going to give them the strength, the determination, and of course being able to speak to a counselor or a parent or a guardian or something. And that's very essential too, or even having a trusted friend that they can talk to, right? But remind them to, get with a trusted authority as well. Now, in the second paragraph, there it says here, continuing talking to the student, you must decide not to allow how others treat you. Okay, so not to allow how others treat you to change your positive moral character. If you're not careful, and we're going to talk about a word here that we're getting ready to cover, tendency here. If you're not careful and you're not on guard, you're not vigilant, you're not being steadfast, the student's not paying attention to themselves, right? They might lose focus of the goal. And the goal is to develop and maintain a positive character, right? And because of a series of circumstances that they've been involved in, whether it's bullying, whether it's any other form of disrespect, whether it's feeling like they are not being heard, they could let go, so to speak, kind of snap. And whatever impulsive decision or thought comes to mind, they just act on it. Okay. And you've heard that with some people. They say, I just blanked out, or I just saw red, and the next thing you know, I'm being put in handcuffs, or next thing you know, my knuckles are bloody, or whatever the case might be. Okay. Now we have to encourage them never to lose control of their mind. That's one of their greatest tools, their greatest assets in determining the outcome of their lives, right? Never let your mind lose control. In a lot of cases, these things occur when people are intoxicated. And you'll see that, and we've talked about that, when people go through depression and difficulties in dealing with disrespect or feeling like they're not accepted. Sometimes they'll resort to alcohol, drugs, self-harm. Sometimes they'll go to food and other things that they might rely on, dangerous driving habits and things of that nature. There's other ways to deal with these things in a way that won't bring harm to yourself, others, or the environment. So it says here, studies show that when people are mistreated, there is a tendency to either take advantage of others or to take revenge against those who are intentionally cruel. All right. So, and of course, these are wrong choices, right? And these are some of the studies that people have, years of research in showing that, because people aren't educated. And remember, this is one of the main things here as to why people respond in the way that they do. They're not educated in the peaceful solution. They're not educated in understanding how to make choices to respond in a positive way. But there is a tendency to either take advantage of others or take revenge against those who are intentionally cruel. And this word here, tendency, just for your notes there as a teacher, this word tendency means, as a noun, an inclination toward a particular characteristic or type of behavior. Now, when we think about that, we can't forget what the display of our character is, right? It's shown through our behavior. At the same time, our behavior shows what type of character that we have. Okay? So it says an inclination towards a particular characteristic or type of behavior, whether that's positive or negative. Okay? It also shows a tendency. A tendency is an inclination toward a certain line of action, whether or not the action follows, and is often the result of inherent qualities, nature, or habit. And remember what we talked about in regards to the word habit there. Habit is something that's done over a long period of time till it becomes a part of your decision-making process. It also says a tendency is a part of your character. Okay, keep that in mind here, because that's what we're focusing on. That's what we're talking about, the building of a positive character. And we need to be mindful of these things, especially as teachers, so that we can help our students to understand, again, refreshing in their minds the factors and the things that they're faced with on a daily basis that shape and mold their character. And these circumstances, these pressures, these influences, right, they play a part in the formation of their character in a push towards either a negative or a positive way. So it says a tendency is a part of your character that makes you behave in an unpleasant or worrying way. Okay, it can be. It's not always unpleasant or worrying, but that's also a part of what it means. But just keep that in mind, because when we see here, when people are mistreated, there is a tendency, not necessarily that they have to do it or that they're forced to do it, but there is a tendency to take advantage of others or take revenge against those who are intentionally cruel. So as a teacher, when we're seeing students who tend to, for lack of better words, behave or respond in a certain way when they're treated with disrespect, right? In our minds, because of what we've learned in the Peaceful Solution, we know, okay, this is a part of their character, right? Or when a person finally snaps and does something or lashes out and says something disrespectful or in a retaliatory way, and they go, I just don't understand. That's just not me. That's just not my character. Really it is. It really is, you know? Because if these things weren't a part of our character, we wouldn't respond even when we're under the most extreme pressure and stress, right? Because what makes up your character is going to be what comes out of your mouth or from your actions, even when you're under the greatest amount of pressure. And bullying can be very, very great for some people, some young people. Some people have the mindset they don't really care what you think. They don't really care what you say about them. They're going to go about life, and they know that eventually you're going to move on. They're going to move on. They're probably never going to see you again. Okay. But that doesn't apply to everybody. So we just need to understand about those tendencies. And of course, if you write down for your notes there's a story on page 43 of the character unit. I believe it's Shantae's story, which shows some of the effects, at least one of the effects of a person who was treated in a very disrespectful way, and how that rippled outward, and she started to treat others disrespectfully, right? In school, and was sent to the principal's office and so forth, So we're seeing here that, when these things take place, you can't allow how people treat you affect your character. Now, of course, she wasn't trained or taught in the Peaceful Solution, and so she didn't know that was affecting her character. But we have to be very careful about that. Of course, we also talk about on pages 107 and 109 in the character unit, the Columbine and the Hatfield and the McCoys, that contention, and how it started over a pig, and how it lasted for generations. People continually responded with disrespect. Okay, not necessarily in the Columbine, but with the Hatfield and the McCoys. Okay, and keep in mind what the author mentioned to us at the very beginning, and I'll just read it really quick in case there's anybody who's joining us for the very first time, from the preface on page 8, in every unit. This is in every unit, and it's under the title Influence from the Teacher. And in the second paragraph, that last sentence, the author says, one statement that I heard more than once from my father in the face of some frustrating event was, son, 2 wrongs don't make a right. 2 wrongs don't make a right. 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 wrongs won't make a right either. Okay? Had my father's words not been mentioned in my hearing, right, where he could hear when he was faced with that emotion, and the emotion was probably high, or he was witnessing something where the emotions were high, and his father mentioned that to him, it set something in his mind. It drove a point home in his mind that he remembered many, many years later. But other more damaging words, such as get even, fight back, I'll never forgive you for that, or I'll get you for that, I may have treated others differently. So if he hadn't heard the positive admonition, he might have actually responded differently in his life. He says, in my lifetime, I have seen many people retaliate, children, adults, and nations. However, I have never seen peace brought by someone doing wrong to another after that person did wrong to them. All right. And this is something also that as teachers, again, I go back to that point that as teachers, as adults, we typically have much more life experience than the students that we're teaching. Okay. So, this gives us the opportunity to remind them that, hey, when in life, when people respond with with more disrespect, when they're disrespected, it only escalates the problem. It only makes the problem worse. Okay? This is why you have to come back with an alternative solution, or better yet, the original solution. This is the peaceful solution. Bring about peace, and the outcome will eventually be peace. So, let's see here. And of course, we can't forget that, that at times people, they tend to, they tend to do harm to themselves even when they're faced with these difficulties of bullying and so forth. That's, again, not a solution. So it says here, both of these are poor choices, all right? Taking advantage of others or getting revenge. They're both poor choices. Bullying someone because someone bullied you will not change the way you are being treated, okay? What that's going to do is give fuel to the bully, right? Even if you said something that made the bully kind of cower back a little bit, the mindset of a bully is, I can't be out-bullied, right? I'm not going to let this person get the upper hand on me. Now I've got to step up my game and bully this person even harder. And now I'll bully his friends that he's with or her friends that she's with, right? Okay? That doesn't change the way you're being bullied just because you started bullying the other person. You will only be causing someone else to suffer in the same way. No one deserves to be mistreated, not you or anyone else. And keep in mind, respect. Keep in mind that word respect. Everyone, no one deserves to be mistreated, but everyone deserves respect, including the person that's doing the bullying. You're responding in a respectful way might very well be, and I know this might seem very kind of odd, right? But it might very well be the first time that that person was treated respectfully. We can't take anything for granted, right? And it could make an impact in a positive way on that person's mind because they expect you to retaliate. They expect you to get angry. They expect you to go cry, But when you respond with respect, that's going to kind of throw them off their game a little bit, right? And again, these are things that bring about positive outcomes. So it says, always treat others the way you would want to be treated. Normally, this will shame bullies, and then they will simply avoid you, It might take a little time, but eventually, once they see they can't get under your skin, they can't offend you, they can't, or at least you're not going to display, offense. You're not going to get agitated and angry. You're not going to shout back at them or curse them out or anything like that. Then they'll go and they'll move off to somebody who's a weaker target, right? And that's something that a lot of young people don't consider, that it takes a lot more strength and character not to respond with disrespect, not to respond in a negative way, not to retaliate or take revenge, right? It takes a lot more strength of character, strength of mind, strength of their emotions, right? To be steadfast in the upholding of these moral principles and to respond in a positive way than it does just to let yourself go and just speak whatever's on your mind. It's very easy to retaliate. It's very easy to take revenge, and to mull over the things that you want to do to the person that's done you wrong. Okay. And this, again, this is something we want to reiterate in their minds, that they actually become stronger morally, mentally, emotionally than the bully when they choose not to retaliate. And again, remember what we covered at the very beginning. This is not the most popular road. This road less traveled that we covered in chapter 1, I believe page 4 of the character unit, right? It's not the most popular road. And not everybody's on the road, and it's not always going to be easy, but it's the right one, right? And it's going to bring about the best, the most positive results for the individual's life. So always treat others the way you would want to be treated. Normally, this will shame bullies, yes, and they will simply avoid you. One thing is for certain, it's best to avoid them, right? Don't put yourself in a situation where you're going to have to encounter the bullies. Now, I understand in school that's not always something that a student can do, especially if they have assigned classes or assigned seats even in a class next to a bully, or even on the bus if they have assigned seats on the bus, right? They can't avoid the bully in those situations, but in cases where they can, they can kind of give them a wide berth to avoid being around them. You don't want to add them to your friends list, your list of friends, okay? And of course, we're still talking about friends here. Now, the next paragraph here, third paragraph on page 73 here, middle of the page if you're just joining us, it says, retaliation in any form will only make the situation worse. And like I said, it takes strength of character, strength of mind to not retaliate, and it might feel great or a relief of pressure or release of pressure to go ahead and shout out something that you've really been wanting to say to this person, or haul off and punch this person in the face or the gut or something like that. You might feel good about it, right? But, the end result brings harm to both that person and yourself, all right? It doesn't help. It does not help the situation. Too many young people who were the victims of bullies choose violence and aggression as ways of getting even. They end up taking the lives of not only the ones who were tormenting them, but also of those who had not hurt them in the least. And we've seen this many, many, many times, at least here, in the United States. Uh, Seemed like almost every week for a while there. Definitely a month did not go by where there was another mass shooting that was taking place, right? And when we think of bullies, we're not just stopping at schools here, because if a person is a bully at school and they're never taught anything to change their life, or nothing's ever impressed in their mind to help them to see why what they're doing was improper, immoral, negative, they're not going to change, right? Now, they might suppress it a little bit, but that little bully is still in there, and it's going to come out and rear its ugly head when the opportunity is given. And they'll be bullies as adults, right? If they're a supervisor or manager, they're going to bully their those who are underneath them, their subordinates, right? If they're a part of a team, they're going to bully them, right? If they're a parent, they're going to bully their child or their wife. Okay, a person doesn't just automatically stop being a bully if they're not educated on why bullying is wrong. So it takes place in school and outside of school. It says here, and of course, many other people are victims when people take retaliation in this manner. It says, in addition to this, they forfeit their own lives by suicide, or they face life imprisonment for their crimes. Okay? And a lot of people are so depressed by what they've gone through, and sadly enough, they become even into a deeper state of depression after they impulsively act on their emotions and bring harm to others, that they go ahead and they take their own lives. And sometimes that's even the goal to begin with, before they hurt others. Of course, that didn't solve the problem, but in their mind, because they didn't have these facts that we're talking about here today, they thought that was the only solution. That's like somebody said, people oftentimes, they take a permanent solution, so to speak, to a temporary problem. Self-harm, suicide, or harming others. In many cases, those are permanent actions to a temporary problem. A problem that can be dealt with. The thing that we have to remember, and kind of we keep our mindset on, when people in this age group of 11 to 13, right, they think where they're at right now is their world. I mean, that is all they can see. Okay? They're not even thinking about 25, being age 25, or 10 or 15 years down the road, or when they're in their 30s or 40s or anything. They're right there right now. And so we have to kind of empathize with them in that, and help them to understand that, hey, what you're going through is not easy, and we understand it's difficult and can be very frustrating. Here's how you can deal with it, right? Don't respond in this way. Set your mind to respond in this way, and just continuously remind them over and over and over again. And eventually, they will see what we see, which is the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. So they can face life imprisonment for their crimes. Do not let this occur to you. Studies have proven that um, adults who were the victims of bullies agreed that learning to let go of their past, rather than dwelling on it, enabled them to accept that although there are people who take advantage of and mistreat others, there are also people who are kind and compassionate. And this has enabled them to lead successful lives. And this is something else that, when a person goes through, um, when they go through, in this case, what we're talking about, bullying here, and they go through bullying, and then they get into a mindset of kind of, maybe depression, or they start looking at things in a pessimistic way. It's hard for them to see, the brightness that's around them, because they just got that cloud over their head, kind of psychologically speaking, right? It's hard for them to see that not everybody's a bully, because their main focus is on this person that's bullying them every day. That's like the only person that they can see, even though most days in this day and age in school, you have several hundred students that are in the school, 400 and 500, maybe even 1,500, in some of these large schools, students, even in a particular class, right? And I mean a class of freshmen or sophomores or juniors or seniors, and even in junior high. But the only thing that person can see is that bully. And so they miss all the opportunities to form positive, strong friendships, because their mind is only focused on the negative thing that they're going with on an everyday basis. But being able to let go of those things, and this is a part of acceptance, right? You're not going to go and change that bully. You're not going to make him stop or make her stop bullying you, but you can change how you think and how you respond to the bullying and the bully. And as a result, it will change the way you look at your environment. It'll change the way your outlook is on life, right? It'll change the way you set your mind to respond to dealing with that person who is treating you in a negative way. Okay, and as it says, this has enabled them to lead successful lives. And one of the things about success is, being able to have, everything that you want in life without taking away from or mistreating others, right? Without using immorality or breaking the rules to attain those things. And it's very important that we reiterate these things to our students, and help them to understand that, going through these difficulties in life, and sadly, I think we've all experienced bullying in one form or another. Remind them in this first paragraph that we covered on page 73, that last sentence, as difficult as these times may be, they will pass. And there are brighter days ahead, and those days can be helped to be made brighter by them learning and developing a peaceful solution, because this knowledge is the power for them to have a successful life. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us this evening for class. And our next class that we're going to have is going to be this Wednesday, the 29th at 5:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. We look forward to having you. Have a great evening, everyone.